Okay, so moving on. Once it's primed, I let it dry overnight, 24 hours. After the examination, even with a magnifying glass, if it's all ready to go, I start into pre-shading. Now, pre-shading is something that sort of got onto the tank market and airplanes, I think, about 15 years ago. It's a very effective way to paint. The results are terrific, and it's a very basic skill. But basically, all my pre-shading, I do it with a Tamiya paint, dark green XF number 61, and it's an excellent pre-shading color. I don't use black. I find that black is a strong color. Sometimes the models end up looking sort of like a corgi die cast as opposed to a realistic model. So here it's all been pre-shaded and then painted over top of that. And so what you do is you just follow the corners of your model and just frame all the model with the pre-shaded color. Any surface like underneath the turret here, you're going to take the dark green and you're going to fill in that area there. Anywhere where the sun is not going to reach on your model, just do a heavy band of dark green color. Underneath these fenders you can put a dark color on. Almost anywhere where you feel the sun isn't going to reach, put a heavier band on, and then continue just to frame all the way around your tank in the pre-shaded process. And it's going to take you half an hour, 45 minutes to pre-shade every little line and opening on your tank. But it's beneficial in the end. As you can see by this turret, which has had it done, and you can faintly see that outline. And that's just one, and it's the first form of layering. And by the time we're finished and get to this point in the tank, there's probably 10 coats of paint, thinner, and oil washes, the beautiful MIG products, the Vallejo washes on it, all kinds of things that are going to take place over the next couple weeks on the tank. And this pre-shading at times seems as if it's a waste of time because it's faded right away. But as you can see, it doesn't. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that I use so much thinner in my paint, because my mixture is normally 70% thinner, 30% paint most of the time. And therefore, these pre-shading practices that we do in the beginning of the model remain right to the end. And it's very easy to see right there. And this Panther, which is almost all finished, you can still see that very first layer of XF61 dark green still remaining in certain areas in the tank. And like I say, it's all a process of layering. So don't hesitate that you're going to end up with all the other bits and things going over top that it's a waste of time, because it certainly isn't. Now, once the pre-shading is done, then we can start painting the tank. And at this point, you're going to have to research your particular tank. If you're doing an African vehicle fighting in the African front, or if you're going to do something on the European theater of war, all these things have to factor into into the project. So if you're going to use hairspray, you have to know way ahead of time that you're going to, because that would be the next step. And we're not going to hairspray this Panther. So let's just carry on and apply the right colors. So a lot of people, this color here is cockpit green, XF71. That's the color of this particular Panther. It's a late war Panther used in Germany towards the end of the war. Came out in the last months of the war. And green, as opposed to this yellow, this German yellow, I have a feeling that the Germans had a lot more green in their in their supply than they had in the yellow, and therefore the tanks started coming out with more green on them than yellow. To be honest, I'm not totally sure why the tanks were more green than yellow, but that is my suggestion as to why. All the tanks in the war, towards the last section of the war, probably were tried. The German tanks were painted in three-tone colors, but certainly that's the colors I chose for my Panther. The color I use for the Hull Red is XF number 9. It's a Tamiya color called Hull Red. I still use XF60, and as you can see the patterns on this tank, there's XF60 and then the Hull Red wiggling its way through the center of that. So map out what you want to do, and the best way to do that is to, again, research, and then to get a 35th scale drawing, and then map out on the drawing exactly where you want to lie down your camouflage, so that you know exactly how your airbrush is going to perform. Don't make it up as you go. Paint the tank green, let it sit for a little while, and then start on the camouflage patterns is not the procedure. What you're going to do is you're going to map this out the day before on a 35th scale drawing, just with a pencil or a pen, and just you're just not going to be able to do it randomly. You can't make it up on the spot. So do a little bit of homework, then proceed with actually applying the camouflage. And there's all kinds of references out there, so finding out the right patterns is not too hard. Okay, one of the great references is this book here, Afp Photo Album. It's a camphora book, and this particular Panther, beautiful thing. Great that it's black and white photographs, because as you guys know, referencing a model is very difficult, and building the exact model, say, that's sitting on the cover of your book, that's not something that I like to do. I would like to maybe do one of the tanks in this unit, but I always have found that it's very difficult to copy this particular Panther or a particular tiger in a book. It's just, sometimes you just don't, sometimes you just get too much into the reference, whereas the enjoyment is sometimes all about painting the tank. So don't get tied up in trying to do the exact tank in a photograph, because it'll just slow down the whole process. But doing a tank that, say, came down the line but was in the same unit as this tank gives you a little bit of flexibility. So that's exactly why I do the models that I do, and choose to do the ones that are back in here. You'd never find any of these tanks as real tanks. They're all taken just as references. These are tanks in particular units, but they're certainly not documented tanks. And that's just, like I say, it's for flexibility. This hobby's made for just enjoyment, and not to be scrutinized right down to the final nut and bolt on the tank. I don't find that sort of modeling is necessary. I'm just trying to duplicate building a Panther late in the war. But having said that, I've seen beautiful, beautiful models that are referenced right off the cover of a book or in any of the 200 pages in this book. It's part of what, it just depends on how the hobby grabs you, I guess. Now, one of the other great books on the market is this reference right here. It's a Vallejo book, Airbrushing and Weathering Techniques, and it's a terrific book as well. And it just has endless, beautiful, beautiful photographs, great quality paper, and tons of techniques. So this is also a book that you'll love to have in your library, and something that you'll reflect on when you're going through the process of building your next model. This is an excellent techniques book. Now, one of the things that's going to come finally on my Panther is the set of tracks. Now the tracks, you can use the rubber band tracks that come with a Tamiya kit. You can use an aftermarket Tamiya Panther G track, and its product number 35171, and it's also an excellent source of track. The beautiful thing is Tamiya's designed it so there's no sinkholes along the. It's hard to find the sinkholes, so you don't have to sit there and sand these plastic tracks for night upon night trying to get the sinkholes out. They're pretty hidden in this particular set of tracks. And also two roll tracks, which is very popular. These particular ones are for a D, but of course you'd select the ones for a G model. But roll tracks are also an excellent source for, or an excellent aftermarket track set. And there's others on the market. Just do a little Google search and you'll find, I'm sure, some great tracks on the market to do with a Panther. And finally, I'm going to discuss pressures and what have you with airbrushing. You can't do this sort of modeling without an airbrush. So you must have an airbrush, a compressor, and I would recommend a gravity feed airbrush, which is this nature, as opposed to a siphon feed, which comes up from the bottom. The only, or one of the reasons for that is it takes a lot of PSI to suck the paint up from the bottom of the airbrush, whereas if you put it in from the top, of course, gravity will help you and there'll always be a good flow of paint. So we'll talk about that. We'll get into airbrushing the green upon this tiger, or this Panther rather, at our next class. We'll have it primed and ready to roll. So stay tuned. Thank you very much.